Okay, it appears as though we're live, so welcome all to the Committee of the Whole meeting for Tuesday, February the 16th. I'll call the meeting to order. And looking to the agenda, there is one change to the agenda. We'll be removing item I2, which is an in-camera item. And just a note to the public, there will be no votes taken after the in-camera session, so we won't be coming back into the public meeting after our in-camera. With that, I'll move that Committee of the Whole approve the agenda as amended. Those in favor? Opposed? Motion's carried unanimously. We have one delegation joining us today from the Bow Valley Chamber of Commerce. And I would welcome whoever it is. Who's here from the Bow Valley Chamber of Commerce? A couple of people. Well, welcome to Committee of the Whole and to addressing council. Looking forward to hearing your presentation, and the mic is yours.
Hey, can you guys see the presentation, or it's just the videos?
At this point, we only see people, no presentation. Okay. If you want to share your screen, then.
I don't have I think it was provided beforehand, so it's basically what I'm going to cover is on the presentation, so I don't know.
Yeah, I have it in my printed agenda, and other councillors will have.
Perfect, then that's good enough, I think, for me. So, so we wanted to thank you for having us. Natalie was going to be joining me. I'm not sure if she's on the call or not. I'm Heather Lear-Murray. I'm on the board at the Bow Valley Chamber of Commerce, and I'm actually the secretary for that board and participated in we started a small 3-person task force to develop the Bow Valley Restart Fund last year. So was part of that process as well. So the purpose of the presentation today is to share with you briefly an overview of the Bow Valley Restart Fund, just a reminder of what it was, how the fund economically supported the Bow Valley, and then also provide you with the final numbers of the program, so where it ended up. So the Bow Valley Restart Fund, it ran from July 2020 to November 2020, and it provided grants of up to $5,000 to eligible Bow Valley businesses facing unexpected restart costs due to COVID-19. The program was developed and administered by the Bow Valley Chamber of Commerce in partnership with the Town of Canmore Economic Development. So basically, through an application process, 39 businesses out of 46 that applied received funding of various amounts. The fund was intended to assist businesses that couldn't access funding through other means. So, for example, some of the ineligible applications maybe would have not been able to show 50% of loss in revenue, or they may have been a not-for-profit, or they may have received a large amount from another source, other government programs, or potentially they maybe just weren't in the appropriate geographical region. So the Town of Canmore graciously contributed $100,000 for the fund, and this assisted 35 Canmore businesses. In addition to that, the Chamber contributed $10,000, and this supported 4 Bow Valley businesses. So out of the 39 businesses that received funding, 11 were categorized as retail, 8 were personal care services, 7 were food and beverage, 6 were in the tourism category, and 3 were events focused. And then we had 4 that were categorized as others. So there might have been like a cleaning company or professional services or something like that. Some of the expenses that were considered eligible by the fund were things like perishable inventory. So if they needed to restock after being closed in order to restart, if they needed to do any deep cleaning, some businesses needed to redesign their space to accommodate physical distancing. So they could claim some of those expenses, or for providing things like personal protective equipment for their staff, sanitizer, barriers, things like that. Expenses that weren't considered eligible under the program were things like operational costs or travel, food, accommodation, things like that. So once we received the applications, we had a selection committee set up that assessed them based on the requirements of the program and then would unanimously approve funding or deny funding based on those requirements. The selection committee was comprised of 3 Bow Valley representatives, so one from the town of Canmore Economic Development, one from the Bow Valley Chamber of Commerce, and then one from a local business community. So in the document that you would have received, you can see that the final numbers are there. The amount dispersed into the business community was a grand total of $107,724. $97,819 of that is from the $100,000 from town of Canmore, and $9,905 of the $10,000 from the Bow Valley Chamber of Commerce. The remaining $2,180 of funding from the town of Canmore has been returned to the town of Canmore's Economic Recovery Fund, and the $94 remaining from the Bow Valley Chamber of Commerce funding was used to cover administration costs such as banking fees and postage in order to administer the fund. The administration of the fund, like I said, was organized by us, the Bow Valley Chamber of Commerce Association. It was a program that was developed in support of our mission to sustain a successful business community in the Bow Valley by elevating, connecting, and advocating for Bow Valley Chamber of Commerce members. However, I would point out that this fund was opened up to all Bow Valley businesses, not just to members of the Bow Valley Chamber. So yeah, in closing, the Bow Valley Chamber of Commerce would like to thank you for your support in building this very important fund and for helping us impact the local business economy during the ever so challenging time that we've been going through. So we would be happy to answer questions if there are any questions in regards to the program.
Thanks very much, Ms. Lear Murray. I do have 1 or 2 questions, but firstly, I want to acknowledge the work the Chamber did with the town last year. That was clearly, it was really necessary given the number of businesses that were involved and benefited. So I'm really happy that we were able to put something in place that could meet those needs from our business community. I'm just wondering if you have a sense whether or not, given we're coming into another COVID summer, would your sense be that small businesses in Canmore are currently better prepared for what we may see this summer, or do you think there may yet again be a need for some sort of program like what you've just described?
It's a great question. I think assistance is would likely be welcomed. I think they're slowly reopening things, which can sometimes be harder even because, then it increased your costs and it's a little uncertain in what volume you'll actually see in things. So I would think that potentially there would be a temperature for another program coming into the summer. I know that in our monthly board meetings, we kind of touch base each time on, have we heard of any other businesses closing and things like that. And each time there's, sad stories of people having to close their businesses or shut down due to what's happening. So I think that they're potentially for sure.
And you're continuing to work closely with Ms. McLeod in the Economic Development Office?
She has been an astronomical part of this programming as well. Her experience has contributed a lot to the program, and we do keep in touch with her. Pauline Gagelio, our executive assistant, I know she talks with Eleanor quite a lot and picks her brain and things like that. So I think it will be an ongoing partnership for sure.
Excellent. One other question I have is around. I know that the Chamber has members throughout the Bow Valley, not just in Canmore, and I'm curious if any of the businesses that we were able to support were businesses in other parts of the Bow Valley, or were they all localized here in Canmore?
Yes. So the money from the town of Canmore was specifically kept in Canmore. Some of the applications that the Bow Valley Chamber assisted were, I think there was some in Banff and some in Kananaskis area. So it was spread out.
Yeah, that's good to know. Thank you.
Yeah.
I'm looking to other members of council if you have any follow-up questions on this report. And Councillor Seeley.
Thank you, Mayor Borman. Just wondering about the businesses that did receive grants. How did it work for them? Was it enough? Did they receive it well? Did it make a difference in their business?
I believe it did. We received lots of, thank yous and some messages around, I would have had to close if I didn't get this money. We did, I believe there will be a press release going out following this, and we've included some testimonials, recipients in that press release as well. So yes, we got lots of great feedback and thank yous. I'm sure we probably disappointed some people. There's, as much as you want to help everyone, it's not always possible to do that, but we tried really hard to help what we can and how we could. So,
well, nice to hear that it was well received. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
If there's no further questions from members of council, I'll just once again thank you both and other members of the board of the chamber that have been involved. It's certainly times like this where the real value of having a very active Chamber of Commerce becomes quite obvious. Hopefully we won't encounter quite as much difficulty in the business community this year, but it's reassuring knowing that the Chamber is in place and ready to help. So thank you both very much, and please pass that along to the others on the board.
We will. Thank you very much, Mayor Borman.
Pleasure.
Have a good day.
Thank you. You too. With that, I'll look to the minutes of the Committee of the Whole Tuesday, January the 19th. Are there errors or omissions? Seeing none, I'll move the minutes be adopted as presented. Those in favor? Opposed? Motion's carried unanimously. And we'll move on now to item D1, the Bow Valley Family Resource Network update. And who's presenting?
Hi, it's Christine here.
Hello, good afternoon.
Good afternoon. Let me just get set up here. It says I have an unstable internet connection, so just wave me down if throughout the presentation something happens here.
Okay.
Can you guys see the main screen there?
Yes.
Okay, perfect. All right, I will get started. All right, good afternoon, Mayor and members of Council. Thank you for having both Rita and I here today. So Rita Yambela is a researcher and evaluator for the Canadian Poverty Institute. She's been doing an evaluation on the Bow Valley Family Resource Network. And I am also going to talk about the Family Resource Network and some of the history and what we've been doing for the last year. So our presentation today will discuss the Family Resource Network's history, include some parent link information, just to give you some context of where we were and where we've come to. We're also going to talk about what's different between the parent link and the Family Resource Network, and then some of the Family Resource Network positions and functions of these positions. Rita's going to discuss in detail the evaluation framework that she's been completing and the process she's taken, the analysis of the data, and some of the recommendations moving forward. So there have been many transitions throughout the past year, as you're all aware. Many creative programs have been developed through the Family Resource Network and many new relationships built. And so much has been learned in the middle of a pandemic. So these are some of the highlights as they refer specifically to this presentation. So in January 2021, the Bow Valley Parent Link in the town of Canmore submitted an expression of interest for the new Family Resource Network. March 25th, 2020, we declared a local state of emergency. And then on March 30th, we were awarded funding for the Family Resource Network. On March 31st of 2020, Bow Valley Parent Link closed its doors. And then we launched the Family Resource Network on April 1st. So a lot happened in a very short amount of time there. And then on around mid-April of 2020, we first started launching programs at the Family Resource Network, and those were all virtually. In June of 2020, the Canadian Poverty Institute and RITA started to begin the evaluation process. So doing interviews with all the Bow Valley Family Resource Network, as well as provincial representation. And then in November 2020, RITA submitted her mid-service report. Whoops, sorry about that. And then in December, we started actioning some of these evaluation items that RITA brought forward. So what's different between the Bow Valley Parent Link and the Family Resource Network? So the Bow Valley Parent Link really focused on that early childhood development for families with children 0 to 6, where the Family Resource Network, the age it has expanded to 0 to 18. Through the Bow Valley Parent Link, one agency held the grant through the province, and it serviced all across the Bow Valley. With the Bow Valley Family Resource Network, multiple agencies are providing services through the Bow Valley Family Resource Network and this specific area. The Bow Valley Parent Link focused on creating protective factors and resilience, while the Bow Valley Family Resource Network is really preventing the need for child intervention services. So services are offered on a continuum from universal to targeted to intensive, universal being open to everybody and targeted really targeting a specific population. So what comes with these big changes? There's lots of growing pains, there's lots of growth, there's lots of learning, lots of adapting and being flexible, and really building new relationships. It's really exciting being a part of a new program and building it. So the Bow Valley Family Resource Network is made up of 3 agencies: the town of Canmore, the town of Banff, and Closer to Home. These agencies and positions listed are provincially funded and provide services across the entire Bow Valley. The Bow Valley is one of 70 networks across the province, and in all of these networks, there are 136 agencies that report to the province. These 3 agencies mentioned here are the ones that make up the Bow Valley Family Resource Network. There is a coordination of services between multiple agencies. So the town of Canmore, which is a hub agency or an anchor agency, has 2 positions within it. We provide information and referrals and also connect the entire Bow Valley Family Resource Network together as a team. So for example, a high needs client might contact the hub about a family balancing many competing complex needs. A referral is made to maybe the child development and whole family support service for further assessment and support this client. So moving on to the child development and whole family support. This position is focused on individual family support for families with children 0 to 18. So for example, when that referral comes through from the hub, this position would be working one-on-one with this family through multiple challenges. It could be a family breakdown with deciding on ways to manage a child's behavior, and also discovered that there may be sibling challenges within that family unit. And then one child may be struggling with anxiety at school. So this position would really directly support this family, as well as bring in other experts and support the family along their journey. The caregiver capacity builder is provides parent education for families with children 0 to 18 as well. The hub would also refer families to the service. So a parent may be struggling with toddler development, and this family may be referred to this service to attend one of the toddler development series. Another family may be struggling with a specific challenge with their school-age child, and this family would be referred to the school-age parenting series or the positive parenting workshops, which is also known as Triple P. So the town of Banff has a joint role focusing on connecting families through play, physical education, and parenting supports. They provide the drop-in program and parent education. Closer to Home, which is a agency based out of Calgary, offers services in the Bow Valley as well. This services focuses on the early years, so 0 to 5, and supporting families in their home with the long-term services. They're currently offering supports and services virtually. So there's 2 more positions part of the Town of Canmore Family Resource Network. However, these are not funded through the province like the other positions. These are funded through the Town of Canmore. The Social Connections Specialist connects families, children, youth, and teens socially. This position receives many referrals also through the Hub, the anchor agency, to programs such as Babies and Blankets, Youth Reading Club, and this position is also launching a teen program in 2021 to support teens with a safe place to socially connect, which we all know is very critical at this point. The COVID-19 Family Support Coordinator position is really a COVID-19 relief position. It's supporting respite care for families with children 0 to 12. You may have seen programs such as homework help or short-term respite care for families with children 3 to 5. So Rita will continue the presentation from here and discuss the evaluation framework and how all of these positions tie together. So from the last screen and this screen as well, really focusing on the Bow Valley Family Resource Network. And so, you know, she's going to be talking about and looking at what is the role of the Hub, that anchor agency within the structure, and working with multiple agencies. How do all of these services fit together? How does the relationship build between these services? So I'm going to pass this over to Rita at this point, and then I'll come back closer to the end.
Well, thanks very much, and welcome to our meeting today, Dr. Yembala. Really appreciate you being here today to provide some of your overview and speak about your evaluation report, and quite likely take some questions from members of council. So welcome to Canmore, and please go ahead.
Okay, thank you very much. I hope everyone can hear me. Mayor,
Yes.
please, can you hear me clearly?
Yep, it's all good.
Thank you very much. So first of all, I just want to say thank you for the welcome to the Town of Canmore's meeting, and also just to acknowledge to the Town of Canmore and to the BVFRN for entrusting the Canadian Poverty Institute and me with the evaluation of this very fresh program. So I'll just provide here a very high level information as to what it is we are trying to do with the evaluation. So as you can see on the slide in front of you, we are looking at 4 main things. So one is to, because we are working with a new program, which is the FRN system, to understand how the various roles and their scopes work together individually for staff, and also gel together as a collective subsystem. The idea here is that because the system is new, there could be things that are just not on people's blind sides in terms of the roles that they are performing, or in terms of the scope of what that they are supposed to be doing. So we are trying to kind of unpack all of that. The next thing that we are trying to do is to actually look at the Bow Valley Family Resource Network as a subsystem. And so to take stock of the health of the system. What are the things that are working well for the system? What are the things that are not working well? What are some leverage points that can be enhanced to make sure that the system works as fluidly as it can? In order to do that, we have to identify. So first, we are wanting to identify gaps. We want to identify barriers to operation. We want to see where there are inefficiencies within the operation of this new subsystem. And so the idea is to be able to get the subsystem to work efficiently, to work effectively, and to deliver the goods for which it was put together. And the last thing that we want to do is to identify any sources of strength or any opportunities that can be enabled, that can be deployed to make sure that all of the gaps, barriers, inefficiencies that are seen are plugged. What we are trying to say here is that we are trying to look for this overall system function by looking at the understanding, the identify, and the identify. Christine, can I have the next slide, please? Is Christine there still?
Sorry, I'm just having troubles going to the next one for some reason.
Oh,
Okay, that looks
yeah,
good.
yeah. Okay, so in order to run the evaluation, I put together what we call a developmental evaluation. In short, a developmental evaluation is just pausing at different periods of an ongoing project or program, and just to figure out what needs to be course corrected, what needs to be improved, what needs to be done differently. So it's basically marking a program in real time. But in order to do this, we developed a 3-step process. And these processes are supposed to actually be progressive. So there is step 1, step 2, step 3. Step 1, which is the self-evaluation, would inform step 2, which is the capacity building. And the processes from step 1 and step 2 would feed into this outcome mapping, which is the final stage. So with a self-evaluation, which is step 1, think of it as stock taking for the staff. So here we are looking for staff to tell us what they are comfortable with the new system, what their areas of difficulty are, what their areas of strength are, and then we'll feed all of that information into step 2, which is the capacity building, where we are looking for staff to grow. So then if there are staff that are really, really needing to grow a lot, we would know. If there are staff that are relatively comfortable, we would know. The thing is that we are not assuming that all of the staff members are starting at the same level, and so they have the same level of competency. So that is what the growth is about. In order to finish the evaluation, we concentrated first on the self-evaluation that happened in 2 steps. So one was to conduct interviews with FRN staff, and also to conduct some interviews with provincial staff, just to be holistic in our collection of feedback. And then staff completed an online self-evaluation tool that I developed and administered just this past January. And so both of those reports were completed and submitted to the hub. The first report I think you have as part of the submissions that were made. The second report you don't have yet. But I just wanted to highlight the response rate and what that means to me as an evaluator. So you see the response rates are like in the stratosphere, and that made me very gratified, because it suggested to me that staff really are very interested in this new process and they really want to succeed in it. The reason this is actually resonating with me is because the loss of the parent link was grieved, and is still being grieved in some ways, but then that energy was being translated into a thirst to do well. And so people are really wanting to know what they need to do to move forward. So I just thought to highlight this as a very huge evaluative insight coming from just something as mundane as response rates. Christine, can I have the next slide, please? Thank you. So I just want to provide a few highlights of what the strengths are that we found with the self-evaluation. So these strengths mainly are from the interviews that were conducted, but not from the online survey, which is the self-evaluation phase 2 that was done. So the first thing that you would notice is that universally, the staff thought that the addition of closer to home to provide visitation services was a very positive move, and they really do appreciate that. The second thing that I did hear loud and clear was that staff across this new Bow Valley system are very determined and motivated to succeed. You don't tend to hear that very much when people are starting with a new process. So that really was a big thing for me to observe. And there is a willingness to work with each other and support each other. This is important to me as an evaluator because it tells me that the soft relationships that are required to have a system work fluidly are already present. So all we need to do is to convert these relationships into concretizing the operation of the Bow Valley Family Resource Network. And there was a sense of optimism around the expanded age range. And it basically had to do with the fact that when they were working with 0 to 6 age range, some people above that age were falling through the cracks, but now there is space to reach more people, and they saw that as a strength. And then there was one last strength. This is not an exhaustive list, talking about the rapport that was being gradually built between the hub and the spoke. So instead of, actually at this point, hubs and spokes are still unclear as to what the relationship is supposed to be. We do have a few hints, but we are not entirely settled in that. Even with all of these uncertainties, there was a very good sense that the relationship between the hub and the spokes was developing very, very positively, and it just needed to consolidate across the Bow Valley Family Resource Network. And I thought that was a very interesting thing as well to find. I'd just like to talk a little bit about the areas of growth, things that people are kind of struggling with at this time. So as I said earlier, there is a grieving of the loss of the Parent Link Center because it's been around for a very long time. And so people are like, oh yeah, the Parent Link Center worked really well, and now we have to work with the new programs. It's a new model, but it has been converted into a motivation to succeed. So there is a give and take over there. Point number 2, it was actually it sounded like a clarion call to me, where the whole Bow Valley system just feels like they don't have enough direction from the province when it comes to reporting and other practicalities of working with the new model. And so I think it's a very significant finding because of the change from the parent link to the FRN model. There's also a few gaps that have been opened in terms of supervision and accountability. So there is a little bit of fault finding around that as well. And then Christine had mentioned that with the parent link, there was one body that received the funds and then disseminated it. But now each body receives its own money. So there is still a little bit of, again, fault finding around that and trying to figure out the implications of having to work from, autonomous or semi-autonomous places in terms of funding and service access. And then as might have been expected, because there has been an expanded age range, there were questions around the presence of expertise to be able to do a good job servicing families and children from age 7 to 18 and the degree to which skills can be transferred. So this is also an area where massive growth needs to happen. Thank you, Christine. So in order to go forward, there are 5 main things that we have identified for now. And there are a few other things that we are working with, but we just thought that with these 5 ones over here would be a good starting place, and they are already being worked with. So one was to find a key position to act as a liaison between the province and the BVFRN, and to also bring back relevant information to the FRNs and back to the province, distribute information and all of that kind of thing. The second thing that we thought would be a good recommendation to begin right now was to talk about having a clear and consistent communication plan. One that is across that reaches all of the Bow Valley FRN agencies, and there is no contradictions within it. The third thing that we wanted to highlight was that we wanted to have the message really be consistent as well, so that when somebody is in Banff or is in Canmore or is closer to home getting a message, that the message they are getting is consistent, it's clear, there is no ambiguity around it. Data collection is one very big one, where we are looking to create a shared common data collection system. So the province has a portal where reporting of data should happen. It's still being developed. But then within the BVFRN itself, we need to be able to have commonality of what it is that people are measuring, collecting data on, and sharing. So that is the point of point 4. And then lastly, it's just about enabling the hub to have strategic direction for the spokes and all of the FRN services. So then the idea is just to encourage the hub, or to position the hub to be much more strategic in the way it communicates with all of the FRNs, all of the services, to make sure that one pivotal point where everyone looks to for direction is present. So these are the 5 main recommendations that we are working with at this point.
All right, thank you, Dr. Yambila. So I'm going to continue with the presentation here and go through each one of those 5 points and just let you know where we're at with that at this stage. And then Dr. Yambila will follow up at the end with just where her evaluation process is going to go. So identifying a key position. So we had a reorganization of the Town of Canmore Business Unit to have that supervisor position. We heard this from the initial evaluation and from all agencies across the Bow Valley. So this central position is really looking at overseeing the budget, guiding the program direction, and initiating collaborative programming as well. This position is gathering information from the province and from the community and sharing it to all agencies. They're supporting the overall Town of Canmore structure and structure within the Family Resource Network service area. And this position also is key for that overall provincial connection, as Dr. Yambila mentioned, to all agencies. So currently there are many meetings and working groups at the provincial level, and this position keeps all agencies up to date and leading the network area. So providing clear, consistent communication was the second one. So the Bow Valley Family Resource Network meets monthly as a group at this point. We've had provincial representation, which is a great way going forward to allow us to ask questions and for them to be involved in what's going on with our network area. We're in the process of developing a clear reporting pathway as we learn more from the government. And as with most agencies and businesses within the Bow Valley, the Family Resource Network has been adapting programs and services depending on COVID restrictions. We need to make sure that we keep this close communication with all the Bow Valley Family Resource Network agencies so that they're aware of restrictions and what is available and not available to be offered. So developing a clear, consistent key message was number 3. So developing a clear communication plan to support program awareness across the Bow Valley. We reframed the Family Resource Network newsletter to include all agencies in the Bow Valley that are providing services to families. One of the deliverables of the hub, that anchor agency, is to connect families with all services available to them. The goal of this newsletter is to become a popular place for parents to search and learn information about programs and services available to them in their community. We're also working with the Town of Canmore Communications Department to provide clear messaging. One of our key priorities in 2021 is to ensure that families and agencies and all Bow Valley residents are aware of the services that we are providing. The Alberta government requires all family resource networks to use a new data collection agent or data collection system that has been recently developed. And as Dr. Yambila mentioned, it's still in development at this point. The hub is supporting the team with this new system, troubleshooting any challenges, and then circling back to the province and making any suggestions for improvements. We are also working on developing a system between the three agencies in the Bow Valley to be able to share important and relevant data. We're unable to currently share this data through the provincial data collection tool. All of the above functions are a key role of the supervisor. They support both the municipalities and the province with reporting practices and the development of outcomes. So streamlining hub administration. As new information is learned from the province, we have been redefining the Family Resource Network roles. We're focusing on professional development and supporting staff with that role transition. Many ParentLink staff transition from the ParentLink to the Family Resource Network. They were very comfortable and knowledgeable with that 0 to 6 and the young families. Staff are currently growing their knowledge and skills through professional development and developing programs for families with older children. Developing a system to understand community trends, understand what families are struggling with, and then guiding overall program development is a key. We have been gathering this information through various community meetings and directly from families. So I'm going to turn it back quickly to Rita, and then I'll just do a quick summary at the end.
Okay, so for the next steps with the evaluation, there are, as you can see, 4 boxes. Priority setting is going to happen on February 24th. That is where we are taking the results from the self-evaluation and deciding how to prioritize. We have the immediate term prioritization criteria and then the medium term prioritization criteria. Once that is all done, we would move into the capacity building and also to start looking at what the provincial agreements are. Those two tie in together. So there's a capacity building alongside looking at the provincial documents that we received and trying to make sure that the competency, skills, and all of those things that are necessary for the success of the FRN are followed through and delivered. So that's what the provincial agreements part is going to be. Then we will be looking again also at system connections. I'd like to kind of reiterate that these systems, this process are actually iterative, so they are happening almost simultaneously, but just for simplicity's sake, we are kind of categorizing them like this. But in terms of the system connections, we are trying to look for all of those pathways and arteries and veins that are necessary to make sure that staff are communicating with the right person, clients that are coming through are able to meet the people they want, are able to be directed where they need to go to. If a potential client is coming in, that they are able to have a system that does not make them feel unwelcome and so then turned away. All of those things are the system connections that we are talking about. Once that has been laid out, the last thing that we'll be looking at would be the outcome mapping, which is where we are going to be tracking all of the deliverables. So at every stage, we have broad outcomes that we want to achieve. But then by the time we get to the outcome mapping stage, it's actually looking at the scope, looking at the goals, looking at all of the provincial agreements and saying to what degree have what we said we were going to be delivering to the province being attained. That will be the outcome mapping. So there is the BVFRN internal outcome mapping that we will do. And then there is the outcome mapping we will do that will be submitted to the province. And then the evaluation will be complete.
So just to summarize before questions here, so the Bow Valley Family Resource Network and all the agencies attached with it are continuing to offer the services for families 0 to 18 in the Bow Valley. They're being adapted based on restrictions through the pandemic. And so many of them are being offered virtually. However, we have had the opportunity to offer many in person as well. The Canadian Poverty Institute has provided an outside perspective into our programs And we are proactively working on building that solid foundation. Dr. Yambella's work not only provides us with a solid foundation, but also sets the BVFRN up for success in the future. In 2021, the Bow Valley Family Resource Network will be working on streamlining services and building community and agency awareness of the services. We're also working towards creating stability. As you can see, lots of work has happened and will continue to happen. Opening a program is no small task. Opening one during a pandemic creates multiple layers of additional challenges. Staff working for the Bow Valley Family Resource Network are no stranger to these challenges. We have learned to be adaptable and flexible and work through the uncertainty. Thank you all for listening and having both Dr. Yambilla and I come to present to you today. We will open it up to any questions you have.
Well, thank you very much for both of you for a really comprehensive report and verbal report. And certainly I really found a lot of value from the written report that you provided in the agenda package, the evaluation from the Canadian Poverty Institute. I have a number of questions. I expect other members of council do as well. And I think my first question would be for Dr. Yambilla. And I'm curious if the Poverty Institute is working with other FRNs across Alberta, or is the Bow Valley FRN the only one you're working with?
At this point, we're only working with the BVFRN.
Okay, that's good to know. I was, and maybe Ms. de Montigny has a bit more, or has some. I'm curious how our experience is comparing to other FRNs across the province. I don't know if you can comment on that. Ms. Brown popped up, so yeah.
Did you want to take this, Ms. Brown, or do you want me to answer?
I was just going to add to what you were going to say, but I'll take it, and then please feel free to add to what I've said. And the reason, so it is a little bit unusual for people to, while starting a new program, to get an evaluation framework incorporated into it. But the reason we did that is we knew that this was going to be a huge transition. We knew that we were going to be ending a program, starting a program, and that there wasn't clear services. So we really wanted to make sure that we were keeping a consistent service for the people of the Bow Valley. Since we've started, we've heard other people say that they would like this kind of service, that they needed that support that we just happened to build in beforehand. We've connected Dr. Yambilla with Stony FRN, for example. And we've heard the same messaging of needing to figure out how you're building the plane while it's flying from our other relationships with other hubs and other FRNs.
Yeah, and thank you for that. I don't know if you wanted to add to that, Ms. de Montigny.
No, that was everything I was going to say and more.
Great. Well, it's certainly been clear from a lot of the information that's been shared through the year and this report that it's been really complicated and quite a bumpy ride. It sounds, I'm trying to look for some glimmers of light, and it seems from some of the report today that there is a glimmer of light, if you will, that things are starting to improve. I don't know if either of you want to speak directly to that.
Oh, Rita's got her hand up there, I think.
Go ahead, Doctor.
Yes. So actually, before I get to the question that you were just posing, I wanted to just share a few perspectives on whether or not we are working with other FRNs. I do know that when I did speak with the provincial representatives, they were very curious about the process that we were undertaking alongside the BVFRN, and just wanting to know what it is that would emerge from this process here, because no other FRN is doing what the town of this FRN is doing. So there could be some trailblazing happening there, but I know there is some interest in them trying to see what this will do for the consolidation of the BVFRN. The other thing that we're talking about in terms of glimmers of hope is that for me as an evaluator, I don't think that the findings so far are grim. They're actually a very good set of findings that we have found. I do know that there wasn't a whole lot, there wasn't complaining or whining that you would normally pick when you are interviewing people, especially when you are starting a new program in the middle of a pandemic. It was more about things are difficult, but we are willing to move forward. I just don't want to give the impression that I am kind of painting the BVFRN as glowingly as I can. This is actually what I found. They do recognize they have problems, but that willingness to grow is palpable for everyone to see. And that is what really encourages me around getting the BVFRN off the ground.
Yeah, and I think just to add to that, the staff and everyone is really motivated, as Dr. Yambilla mentioned throughout her presentation. We're really trying to get our footing, and it is challenging opening a program during the pandemic. Like there's no question it adds so many layers of complexities to it. And so I think, we've got the right players at the table here. We definitely have we've got a strong staff, and we've got strong management to kind of support us through the process. And we're really creating a lot of these internal processes that, are making it efficient for us, regardless of kind of what's going on the outskirts in terms of the province and how they're trying to manage things through the pandemic and trying to open this massive program. So, yeah.
And it's I'm picking up on these glimmers, positive indicators. So I'm sure the rest of council is. But I wondered if you could speak directly to the note in Dr. Yambilla's report about it says there was no sense of direction from the province about FRN. So has the province started to figure their act out and give some direction to the FRNs, the 70 FRNs in the province?
Yeah, yes. So from what I've seen from the beginning to now, so I've been a part of a lot of the meetings right from April 1st onwards, and they are starting to figure things out really slowly as well. And I'm sure their answer would be the same thing, trying to figure this out during the pandemic, and, how much kind of work they did ahead of time. Like, we know how quick that process was beforehand with, announcing the closure of parent links, getting the EOI organized and submitted. So that was quite a quick process. And so, really unsure of how much kind of prep or pre-work they had beforehand to go into April 1st, and then the pandemic happened. So there definitely has been a shift, and there's been a shift in terms of staff that are working up there and supporting the program, and so I do feel like there is that will come. And they did mention it, that Bow Valley Parent Link, when Parent Link got the funding, there was a couple of years where it was quite rocky, and that is just part of the process with opening a new program. So just to to be patient, we're trying to figure things out as they go, but there's a lot of engagement with the staff and with people in on the ground, which is really positive moving forward.
Mm-hmm. And that's good to hear. Thank you. In this same vein, I wonder if you've shared this report from Dr. Yambilla and the Poverty Institute, if that's been shared with our MLA as information.
It hasn't at this point, but that's a great suggestion.
Yeah, I'm certain that the MLA would be as interested in reading the details of this report as council is. Are there questions from other members of council? Councillor Comfort.
So I'm curious, great report, by the way, thank you very much. And the action points were particularly interesting and very frank, so I appreciate that. So this might be a difficult question to answer, but do you see, and this could be for Dr. Mbilla, is it? Yambilla? Do you see gaps that will remain even when this program finds its feet, as you put it? Because it's such a change from what was there previously.
Thank you for the question. From the standpoint of perfection, yes, there will be gaps. From the standpoint of just making sure that absolutely no one falls through the cracks, there will be gaps. But I feel as though if we get our act together and we are getting the various spokes to communicate the way I envision it in my head, that risk is going to be severely minimized. So what we are trying to do here is to really dot all of the I's and cross all of the T's, which is why we are looking at this as a subsystem. And if it is a subsystem, we want to make sure that all of the players that need to be communicating are communicating. So one of the things we are trying to do is to figure out what is the role of closer to home, for instance, and to what degree are they connected to the town of Banff. And if they are connected to the town of Banff and somebody comes through the door, well, what is supposed to be triggered to make sure that that person gets what they need from closer to home, because closer to home is based out of Calgary. It is just to illustrate the degree of detail we want to bring to the evaluation of the subsystem. So yeah, just to say, in terms of perfection, I would hesitate to go there, but then we are really trying to just severely minimize the risk of people not getting what they need from the system, because that's the ultimate goal.
Thank you for that answer. Could I ask another question?
Go ahead.
Mr. Bowerman, sorry. Well, it's not a question really, it's sort of an observation. You said you were looking for bright spots, and I have to say that once again, our, what do we call them now? FCSS still? Are you still FCSS? Lisa, I see you're on the line there.
Well, we're Community Social Development, and then this is Family Resource Network.
Okay, so Community Social Development, that department, through its various iterations and different name changes, has always put the interests of its clients first. And that's really clear. And it's really clear in this report too, from the positive things that Mayor Barman's looking for. That's one of the things that shines through. So thank you very much for your dedication.
Can I just add something to that Dr. Yimbala said?
Yeah, you bet.
Thank you. So it is a different service than the Parent Link service. And so there will not be the exact same service that we had before, and not to the same level. But one of the things that this council did was you also invested in that social connection person. And so that allowed us to gap that big, to fill that gap, because it would have been a big gap of not having that early years program. So I just wanted to say thank you for that.
Well, you're welcome. And, I'm just curious, so that position will continue on into the future. That's not a temporary. And
That's correct.
But the COVID-19 family support coordinator, that presumably is a short-term position.
To the end of 2021. Yep.
Right. Thank you. Thank you again for all three of you being here and sharing all of the information with us. It's been a lot to digest, but really good to understand where we are after not even a year. Clearly the decision, at least it's clear to me, the decision on somebody's part to include the Poverty Institute as an advisor in this project was a good decision. I think the value added from Dr. Yambilla and the Poverty Institute, it looks pretty clear to me, the value. So unless there's any other questions, I'll thank you all for being here today, and look forward to hearing more increasingly positive reports in the future.
Thanks, Mayor
Thank
Bowerman.
you.
And with that, I'll move on to item D2, which is the benchmark assessment update. And who do we have presenting there?
Good morning, Mr. Borman. How are you? Or afternoon?
I'm well. How are you?
Good.
It's been a while.
Yes, it's been almost over a year now. So
Mhm.
unfortunately, we have to do this over Zoom, but hopefully we'll be back in the same room in short order.
Yeah, well, Zoom's working okay as long as you don't forget to turn your filter off.
That's fair point. Fair point. Joining me today is Deanne Bannerman. I'll just quickly reintroduce myself. So I'm Lance Waylaw again with Benchmark Assessment Consultants. With me is Deanne Bannerman. I believe she's going to be sharing her screen and running the PowerPoint here today. So our intent is to have me go through the PowerPoint and present the 2021 assessment mail out summary and update to council here. And as I go through, you may hear Deanne jump in and add on to some of the things that I've said, or make sure that I stay on path and catch any of my missteps. So she might jump in from time to time. Also, I think it could be easier given the Zoom presentation that if there are some questions that come up throughout the presentation, of course, we'll have some time at the end to field those. But if there's something that comes up, just a question of clarification or otherwise, feel free just to jump in and say, hey, Lance, can you stop? Can you go back a little bit? Just have a quick question on a particular side. We can address that right away and move on from there. So if we can move on to slide 2. So I'll just start in and give council a little bit of an overview of our presentation here today, and it'll follow a very similar path as the previous year. And the 3 main focal points for us here today that we want to present is number 1, the assessment market changes. So of course, when we talk about the change in assessment due to market, we're talking about the difference in market conditions from the previous year's assessment valuation date, which was July 1st, 2019, to the current valuation date of July 1st, 2020. So in a sense, what has the market done in the last year or in the previous year from the valuation, and how has it affected the residential and non-residential assessment classes? By extension, there are always some areas or subgroups or sub-properties that do experience higher than normal year-over-year percent increases due to assessment model review, redevelopment, that type of thing. Even difference in market changes specific to location or physical characteristics. So we like to make sure that council is aware of some of these areas that have higher than normal percent increases due to these reasons. So we'll go through a few of those properties towards the middle section. And lastly, we want to focus in on assessment growth. So this is assessment increases due to subdivisions, new construction, addition, renovations, anything like that. And lastly, we'll end off with a few key dates and of course some resources for council members as well as ratepayers. So because assessment is something that really it's an annual process. And if you're like me, you get your assessment notice and you have a quick look at the value. And if it's reasonable, you might put it off to the side and forget about the process altogether. So it's always good to have a bit of a refresher of the assessment process. So as a quick reminder, assessments in Alberta, they are prepared annually. They are based on market value. And of course, the assessor has to prepare assessments using mass appraisal. For the current 2021 tax year, the value of the assessments is based on the market as of July 1st, 2020, and it reflects the physical condition of the property on December 31st, 2020. And of course, as most of us know, market value is, of course, the amount that a property might be expected to realize if it's sold on the open market from a willing seller to a willing buyer. Mass appraisal, in short, what the assessor does is he groups like properties, stratifies them together, uses the common data within those stratifications. So for properties prepared on the income approach, we'd be looking at income and expense data. So for example, like hotels. For residential condos, we'd be looking at market sales. And for special purpose type properties, we'd be looking more towards cost data and preparing those on the cost approach. So of course, we would create a valuation model based on this common data, and then we would apply that back to all properties within that stratification. This ensures fairness and equity within the group. So just a general overview of the 2020 tax year assessment roll. There are 12,472 total assessable parcels. The total taxable assessment is 8.9 billion. This includes 3,392 single-family households, 4,642 residential condo units, and 1,767 commercial and industrial properties. Now we want to start in on the market change. And as I mentioned, market change, simply put, is what are the difference in the market conditions from the previous valuation date of July 1st, 2019 to the current valuation date, which is July 1st, 2020. And as mentioned, not all properties or sub-property types will increase or decrease at the same rates. Oftentimes from different periods in time, you are going to have some change in market demands with respect to location or physical characteristics. So oftentimes you will have a bit of variance for market change just based on what properties are selling for in certain locations or specific physical characteristics. But overall, for the residential assessment base, the year-over-year change specific to just pure market, we're looking at an overall change which I would describe as very stable. So overall, we're looking at a 0.2% increase year over year in the residential category. So if you remember back to last year with some of the improvements that we had implemented and some of the changes that we had made, the overall market change last year for the residential property type was roughly 6.1%. So in comparison to last year, you're experiencing a fairly stable base. Some of the key takeaways in this year, if you pan down to the bottom of the graph, one of the things you might notice is that the percent change ranges are very narrow this year. So, for example, the most typical range, 0 to positive 2.9%, that includes roughly 3,748 properties, is only about 3% difference. Whereas last year's percent ranges were about 9%. So the same ranges last year were 0 to 9%, 10 to 19%, 20 to 29%. So there was a very wide variance last year, whereas this year, some of the improvements that we implemented over the 2020 tax year have really started to narrow those range. So you should start to see a more stabilized, consistent and predictable assessment base, not only for this year, but as we continue to move forward. So, like I said, in saying that the year-over-year change is fairly stable, and we're experiencing a positive 2.2% change overall, there are again some areas that we would consider hotspots. Essentially, these areas, due to assessment model reviews or redevelopment of the assessment models, or like the bottom there, we did do some physical re-inspections where we did have the benchmark staff members take to the field and knock on doors, get surveys, or at least collect and update the property details of specific properties in the three areas we see here: the peaks of Grassy, Larch, and the Lions area. But overall, what you're going to see in the following slides are condo complexes, which ultimately the assessment models were reviewed, they were redeveloped, and it has led to a higher than normal percent increase year over year. So the first is the complex at 104 Armstrong Place. So this is a residential complex. There's about 52 condo units in this complex. Overall, the complex is going to have a median assessment increase of 13.1% change. So to give you a little bit more numbers behind that, the previous year's assessment, median assessment, was $444,000. This year, we're looking to bring that median assessment, or the overall median assessment of the complex, is $502,000. So it's roughly a $58,000 increase on the median assessment within this complex year over year, which has resulted in of course, the 13.1 percent change there. Moving on to the second complex, this is the lodges at Canmore. So this is the eastern complex, 109 Montaigne Road. So in this particular complex, it's a 3-story complex, and there's a bit of a mix here. You do have part of the units on the 2nd floor, all of the units on the 3rd floor. These are the residential tourist homes, whereas the main floor is your visitor accommodation, your hotel condos, as well as some of the 2nd floor as well. So this would exclude the 1st floor and the hotel condo units on the 2nd floor. This is specifically with the residential tourist home units, which are some of the 2nd floor and all of the 3rd floor. So in total, there'd be 36 units here. Overall, they're going to see a median year-over-year change of 12.5%. So to give you some numbers to some rough numbers to give you a feel for the values there. The median assessment last year was 396,000. This year, that's moving up to about 439,000. So it's about an increase of 43,000 on the median assessment within this complex. Right beside it is 107 Montaigne Road, but still the lodges at Canmore, very similar to 109. And again, they're going to be experiencing for the same reasons of redeveloping the valuation models here for the 2021 tax year. They're going to be experiencing an increase of 10.1%. So median assessment last year, 410,000, moving that up about 38,000 to 448,000. So now we're just going to shift gears into the non-residential assessment base. So as you recall from last year, there was some significant changes on the non-residential assessment base where the overall market change actually fell in about 15%. A little bit of a different story this year, certainly fueled by a lot of the traditional hotels as well as some of the lodging condos. But overall, we're going to be seeing a year-over-year decrease in the non-residential portfolio with respect to market change. It's actually going to go down roughly 2.9%. And the majority or 2/3 of that really comes from the traditional hotels. So last year, the traditional hotels were assessed at 137.8 million. We're seeing those values fall to a cumulative 115.3 million, or roughly a drop of 22.5 million. As a percentage, that's about 16%. That inventory is coming down about 16%. When we have some discussions with our peers around the province, and of course, Benchmark, we do prepare assessments in about 50 other municipalities. It seems that the typical year-over-year decrease in the lodging industry is about -15 to a -20. So it's very consistent. The town of Canmore is falling within that range. And really the remainder, it really comes from essentially the lodging condos. Some of the lodging condo complexes did see a small compression of value, and that's really what's fueling that overall non-residential decrease of -2.9%. But just lastly, before we move on to the next slide, you can see that the actual typical range or the most common property should experience about a 0 to 1% increase. And so this would be more of your general strip commercial or your general industrial. So overall, it's still conveying the same message as the residential portfolio in that it is a stable assessment base, but we are going to see that decrease, and it's primarily fueled by the lodging industry. So moving on to the first hotspot in the non-residential area. So this is the Wind Tower Lodges and Suites, and unfortunately, we had a very deep dive and review into this assessment model, and we have redeveloped it for the 2021 tax year. Those numbers are correct. It's not a typo. They are going to see assessments nearly doubling from the last year. And to give you a little bit background on that, in the 116% increase year over year, the previous assessments within this complex had a median assessment of 153,000. So overall, the values were very low. And then ultimately, when you take a look at the last 3-ish years of sales there were 10 good sales available for analysis. The median sale price was roughly 360. So you can see that based on what these condo units were selling for, as compared to overall, the values were quite a bit low. And so we did choose to redevelop the assessment model this year and bring the assessments up to market levels that are much closer to what they're trading for. So median assessment, again, within the complex was 153,000 last year. That's going to be increasing by 178,000 up to a median assessment of 331,000. So a significant increase, but well justified when we take a look at the market sales. Second, this is the Grand Rockies Resort. Very same circumstance here. We did a deep dive and a review of the assessment model. We had redeveloped it for the 2021 tax year. There's 61 units in this particular complex, and they are going to be experiencing roughly a 30% increase year over year. Median assessment last year, 302,000. Median assessment this year, 392,000. So an increase of about 90,000 on the median assessment within the complex itself. But again, the median sale prices in that particular complex was roughly 370,000. So we feel the new model is again a little bit closer to market value. Third, this is the Canadian Rockies chalets. There's 40 units in this particular complex. Very similar circumstances here. Ultimately, the previous year's assessment was 188, or sorry, median assessment was 188,500. We've redeveloped the valuation models, and the new values are going to have a median assessment of 224,000. So roughly a $35,000 increase within these particular units. And lastly, to wrap up the non-residential hotspots, this is the Mystic Springs chalets. Again, very similar circumstances, 46 units within this particular complex, going to be experiencing a year-over-year change of 16%. Median assessed value of $400,000 last year, median assessment of $463,000 this year. So an increase on the median assessment, roughly 63,000. So now shifting gears to the last focal point of the presentation, assessment growth. As I mentioned previously, this is increases in assessment due to essentially a change in inventory. So it'd be a new subdivision, a new house, a new hotel, renovations, additions, anything attributable to new inventory is essentially what goes into the assessment growth. So overall, on the non-residential side, we had roughly $9.2 million of non-residential growth. If we compare that to last year's numbers that we had presented last year, the non-residential growth numbers last year was about 4.5. So you're looking at slightly over double of where the non-residential growth was in the previous year. So some very strong growth on the non-residential side, and same could be said for the residential side. So 136 million on the residential side as compared to 128 million of growth in last year. So both categories or both assessment classes are experiencing year-over-year increases in the inventory by way of the assessment growth. So a few of the notable properties that are on this list. So this is the View Canmore at 120 Kananaskis. So I should clarify. So the numbers that you see just below the narrative there, the addresses. So so this is the additional assessed value attributable to the growth since it was last assessed. So this doesn't reflect the total assessment. So for example, the View Canmore, the total assessment is $9,459,000, but the additional assessment attributable to the growth or the increase in the progressive nature of the construction is going to be 4.4 million. Next, the adjacent Coast Apartments. This is at 521 Old Canmore Road. Growth for this year, an additional 3 million. And lastly, the residents at 7th and 7th, very similar numbers, additional 3 million there as well. On the non-residential side, we're now seeing the completion of the Shops of Canmore at 300 Old Canmore Road. Ironically, again, adjacent to the previous property, but this is building 3 that was completed for the 2021 tax year, and that attributed to another 3.4 million in assessment growth. So overall, that complex is assessed now for this year at 17.3 million. And next, I'm sure everybody recognizes this one just behind the town office there. This is the Base Camp Suites. So again, this was a partial construction for the 2020 tax year. Now it's been complete, and an additional 1.6 million is now attributable to that assessment growth. And lastly, this is Moose Meadows on Bow Valley Trail. These are the industrial flex buildings that are in construction, very early stages, but they've contributed an additional 850,000 into the non-residential assessment growth. So I'll leave you with these last 2 slides here. Just a few key dates and reminders as we move forward into the review period. So of course, the assessment notices were mailed out on February 12th. The assessment complaint deadline is April 21st. The provincial assessor prepares and mails out the linear and non-linear DIP properties. So the linear DIP properties will be mailed out or were mailed out January 31st. Whereas the non-linear DIP properties, they make up a very small portion of the assessment base, but will be mailed out February 28th. And lastly, some resources for the ratepayers as well as yourselves. The town website has some really good information with respect to the assessments and frequently asked questions, as well as the interactive property viewer map available for all to see. And again, if there's any questions or if any of the ratepayers want to talk to a benchmark assessor, they can always contact us at canmore@benchmarkassessment.ca.
Well, thank you. That was a very thorough report, very thorough. I don't recall I don't know how many years it's been, I don't recall anything like this from our assessors. So thank you. It's really greatly appreciated. And I guess I can prepare for some emails from residents or owners of Wind Tower and Grand Rockies, perhaps. But
yes, I would suspect 1 or 2. Yep.
Yeah, but you know, having this information at hand really makes the world of difference. It's so much easier for members of council to respond or for administration to respond to those questions about the assessment increase by having this clear understanding of circumstances. And, you know, it's really telling when you note the couple of the properties with medium assessment last year that we all know was incredibly low. If I could buy a unit at the price you mentioned, I would certainly do that. But it's been a really informative report. One question, which is not that relevant to the numbers, but you mentioned that your team had been out door knocking in 3 residential neighborhoods. I'm curious what sort of reception they were getting at the doors.
Well, of course, it was right in the middle of the COVID. So our team was obviously tried to get ahead of the communication. So with the town, we did put out some communication that we would be in certain areas and we'd be wearing our face masks and try to make sure that we were doing our appropriate distancing. But I think it's historically, when assessors did re-inspections, they would knock on doors. And I remember 20 years ago when I used to do it, I'd actually go into the houses and go through the property with the property owners. And of course, COVID circumstances, that was not an option. So most of the time, or for this summer, we would just knock on the door and basically just discuss the details we had on file with the property owners, just try to update or confirm the details or any changes. We did have, I think there may have been one or two of the folks that maybe were displeased with the process, but I think overall it went fairly well, and I think a lot of the ratepayers out there knew that this is something that we want to do and we need to do. And so they're very accommodating, very helpful. We also had a survey that we posted online. So if people were uncomfortable with the door-to-door interview, they could go online and fill out the survey as their time permitted. So we did get quite a few responses on the online survey as well. So overall, we felt it was a pretty good success.
Well, that's great. I'm really, I'll say I'm very impressed by the work that Benchmark has been doing for the town. And I'm wondering if there's questions. Councillor Sanford, you have a question?
Thank you, Mayor Barman. Thank you for your presentation, Mr. Wilagi. Just in response to that previous question that was asked, what made these areas the hotspots, the residential hotspots? How are they? Why are they identified as residential hotspots?
The re-inspection areas or the residential hotspots that I sort of focused on here today?
Yeah, the re-inspection areas.
Yeah, so we had the benefit of going through the customer review period in February, April, March, May, June, up into the complaint date, which was extended to July 1st. And so when we have a lot of inquiries or a lot of concerns from the ratepayers in certain areas, they tend to move to the forefront of a re-inspection cycle. So a lot of times we'll have a plan in place on what we want to do for a 5-year re-inspection cycle or the areas that we want to look at. But oftentimes, as problem areas or areas that we think have some significant issues start to come to the forefront, we'll oftentimes switch which areas we do the re-inspection in. So to answer your question in a little quicker manner, we did have a lot of phone calls in these areas, and they did sneak up to the forefront.
So it wasn't just the type of development that was going on in that neighborhood at that particular time?
No, I would say specifically it was due to some of the feedback we were getting from residents, phone calls and emails, and we felt that these areas we would see more benefit from doing first than last.
Okay, thank you.
Are there other questions from members of council? Councillor Comfort.
I'm just curious about the online survey. Would that be a suitable kind of tool to offer in non-COVID times?
Yes, I think it's a fantastic tool. And in fact, we internally, we're in the process of trying to expand that idea because it is an easy way for some property types, for example, residential condos, where for an assessor to go to the front door and try to access all the units, certainly some layers of complication in doing that. So for residential condo units where maybe the key factors and variables used in the assessment model are very limited or not in abundance, I think something like online surveys would be fantastic for that type of property.
Great. I see no other questions. So once again, thank you both, Mr. Wilagi and Ms. Bannerman, for joining us here today. It's been really interesting.
Well, thank you, Mr. Mayor, and again, hopefully we'll look forward to seeing each other in person very soon.
Let's hope so, huh?
Bye for now.
Take care.
Bye.
With that, I will move us on to item E1, council updates. I see very few of us managed to get a written report in time for this agenda, although Councillor Sealy did and Councillor Hills did. Councillor Sealy, I don't know, in your report, there were some bullet items, but no details. Was there something in particular that you were sharing with council under your report on the Canmore Museum?
I thought I could keep it to bullets. TCK did receive some funding from the government, $710,000.
Yeah, no, I'm sorry. I understand that. I'm looking at the Canmore Museum. There's no details associated to your bullet points.
No, I've missed a few meetings, so I'm trying to fill in the details. I just took some of the things they're looking at, strategic issues, membership development. They're doing some work there. And Three Sisters Mountain Village and Lamp House Miners Path. That's new. They're looking at that. And so I thought I'd just keep it in bullet point right now because I don't know all the details about it.
Okay, thanks. I should report briefly on the last meeting of the Tourism Task Force, although I did speak about it at our recent strat planning meeting. For the public record, I'll note that last Thursday at the task force, we had presentations from three representatives from Alberta Environment and Parks, being Rob Simmerich, who's the Executive Director, Lands Delivery and Coordination South. Michael Roycroft gave a really detailed and interesting presentation as the new Regional Director for the Kananaskis region. And Jay Honeyman was there as the bear conflict specialist to answer specific questions around that area of interest. And also, this was quite interesting, Leanne Allison was there to speak a bit about the work she's doing and share a brief video with the task force. And she initiated a conversation around what's happening in New Zealand and other tourism destinations where visitors are asked to read and understand and then sign some sort of a pledge about how they'll support the landscape and the areas that they're visiting. In New Zealand, it's called the Tiaki Promise, and Ms. Allison was reviewing some preliminary planning that she's been putting together around something similar for the Bow Valley called, or she's referring to as the Mountain Keeper's Oath. So we'll look forward to seeing more of that sort of possibility roll out. The Tourism Task Force was pretty hepped up on it, so expect there'll be more discussion ensuing. Councillor Comfort.
I just wondered, would we see something like that presentation come to the committee of the whole?
I suppose it could be arranged. I'll leave that to Ms. DeSoto. Yep, Ms. DeSoto.
Thanks, Councillor Comfort, for that question. I would just let all of council know that all of the Tourism Task Force meeting minutes are on our website. And when we do have presentations, we've been having presentations since late 2020. We are recording those presentations and putting them on the website. So in addition to the presenters that Mayor Borrowman just mentioned, we've had presentations from industry representatives, also from our own municipal representatives and from some tourism experts as well. So well worth the time to review those if you have that inclination.
I will go and have a look. I'll do it instead of Netflix of an evening. There we go.
Well, may need an extra large bowl of popcorn for that. But yeah, there was a lot of very interesting conversations we've been having at the task force level, and which I know will roll out to the broader community fairly soon once we get into that community engagement phase. Are there any other questions or comments from members of council regarding councillor updates? Seeing nothing, I'll move on then to item F1, which is the administrative update. And I do have a question under community social development. The first point under FCSS notes FCSS is working with the town of Banff and Banff Kenmore Community Foundation to apply to the Civil Society Fund from the province of Alberta. And I'm just curious if there's any information where that fund is at and the application Is there any?
Nope, nothing additional to what's there. If the grant application is successful, then we'll circle back to council with an update.
Great, thank you. And a similar question, I guess, for Ms. Cottle, since you're there. Under fire and rescue, the third point, under recruitment for paid responder intake, it notes that the recruitment will run until February 12th, which is a few days ago. Is there any preliminary information on that recruitment process?
I don't have it. I believe there were several good candidates and now they'll start going through those applications, but I don't have any more detail than that.
Okay, well, we'll look forward to getting that information when it's available. Thank you. Councillor Comfort.
Can I jump ahead to Public Works and Sustainability?
Go ahead.
I just wondered, there's the pilot that's going to start with the Bow Valley Food Alliance and GOAT, a Calgary-based organization with an app-based approach to food rescue. I'm presuming they're going to come back to us with a report on how successful that pilot was. And we have to encourage at least 5 businesses to sign up for the pilot and promote it to the community. I just wondered if there's any progress on that.
I am not sure as to progress as of today, but I will follow up with a note out to council. And yes, they will come back with a report on the success of the program.
Great idea.
Councillor McCallum, did you have a question?
No, just a statement about B4 protective services with the Be Nice Shovel Your Snow and Ice for your neighbors. I'm really happy to see this. I think that there's some spots in town that could really use some help, particularly on the main street, although that might have been cleared up over the weekend. But I know that we've been doing a really great job as a municipality on trying to keep our trails tamped down. And it would be great to have that fluidity of a snow clearing, not just throughout town, I guess. So I'm happy to know that this little campaign is moving forward. Thank you.
Other questions this time? Seeing none, I will note that there's a brief report on the gravel trails work under Public Works. I just wanted to note that I continue to hear, I'm sure other councillors do continue to hear very positive feedback on that program. If there's nothing else under F1, I'll turn to item G1, the council resolution action list. Are there any questions, comments in regard to that report? I see none. So at this point, then I will move that committee of the whole go in camera to prevent disclosure of advice, proposals, recommendations, analyses, or policy developed for a public body in accordance with section 24(1)(a) of the Freedom of Information and Protection of Privacy Act. And call the question, those in favor? Opposed? Or going in camera? And just again to note that when we come out of in camera, it will only be to adjourn the meeting. So there won't be any other discussion or voting